Hello everyone, Mason here. How are you doing? After months of picking up books that I either DNF'd or really wished I had, I've finally read something that I actually enjoyed. That feels good to say. My reading slump was bad. I was stuck in a rut and I thought maybe it was time to get out of my comfort zone and try something new. Something different. Early November presented a perfect opportunity, with Lee away for 2 weeks and empty days to fill, all by myself. What better time to dive into a fantasy? Yeah, that's right, you heard me. It's okay, the world isn't ending. You can sit down for a minute if you need to. I realise that I've kinda cultivated this image, especially with Chatty, that I'm the death guy. Does a story have guts and gore, brutal murders and intense suffering? No? Well then I'm not interested, mate. At least that's the character that I've been playing up to for comedic effect. The fact that I'm here to tell you about the first book that I've enjoyed in months, which just so happens to be John Gwyn's The Shadow of the Gods, probably isn't going to help, is it? Oh well. I went into this saying that I wanted something different, and John Gwyn really delivered. I'm sure you know the deal by now, because I'm late to the party, as I always am with popular culture. The Shadow of the Gods is a Norse-inspired epic fantasy, and it felt good to dive into something that felt so vivid, unique, and authentic. Everything about this setting is tangible. You can feel the icy cold water of the fjords, and the warm ground around the fire mountain beneath your feet. You can feel the weight of a weapon in your hands, and the burning of your muscles as you sit on your oar bench and row. You can smell the warm food in the mead halls, the salty spray of the ocean, the rusty tang of blood, and piss. Lots and lots of stale piss. I recently told Sam, from Greener Side of Sam, that despite my blindness, I'm quite a visual reader/writer. I find it incredibly easy to visualise the story in my mind's eye, and as I made my way through The Shadow of the Gods, I got some truly cracking visuals. The imagery is crystal clear, and the descriptions are delivered beautifully. You might even say, it's marvellous, to use a Chattyism. As much as The Shadow of the Gods would be amazing as a TV show, if there was ever an adaptation, that's not what I'd want, because it would be a brilliant video game. I thought about that multiple times as I was making my way through the story. I just wanted to take control of the characters and go exploring. Find all the bits and bobs scattered about, have a nosy around Snackovic, which is one of the coolest settings I've ever encountered, if I'm being honest. One of the things I absolutely love about this book is that Gwyn drops you into this post-apocalyptic fantasy world and just goes, deal with it, buddy. There's no clunky exposition, no info dumps, no hand-holding. You're just presented with Vigrid and expected to catch up. Everything you learn about this world comes naturally. It's filtered through the experience of the characters. For the most part, nobody needs to explain anything about this world because they live there. They know all this stuff already, and I think that's mint. At the same time, it wasn't overwhelming. I never got lost. As the story progressed, I just found myself becoming familiar with things. I knew what happened during the Guthpalar, how the Bonebat Mountains were formed, what a Drekker was. I just felt like I was being assimilated into that world, and oh man did I enjoy it. Considering that this world is filled with monsters, magic and the remains of dead gods, it was grounded, it never felt over the top. It was gritty and dangerous, but somehow still beautiful. Even the very few things that initially caught me off guard and felt a bit weird turned out to be genuine pieces of Norse lore, and I really appreciate that. Even the title is bloody perfect, it's so fitting. Vigrid is a world in which the gods were real. They fought amongst themselves, as gods tend to do, and now they're all dead. The thing is, the people that live in Vigrid don't revere the gods, they hate them. Their infighting almost destroyed the world and drove humanity to extinction. With the story taking place just 300 years later, this is a world that remembers. The legacy of the gods really does cast a shadow over everything. The characters are the clincher though. That's what I read for, to make new friends, go on adventures with them and see the world through their eyes. I love that Gwyn gives us 3 characters that feel like real people. Despite the fact that he maintains the third-person perspective throughout the entire story, every chapter varied in tone. Orca, Varg and Alvar see the world in completely different ways. They have entirely different motivations, and they interact with the people around them in ways that make sense and feel consistent. They have varying degrees of experience, and that really helps to ease you in. Orca is a mother, a wife, and a brutally badass, battle-hardened warrior who operates with grim determination and matter-of-fact ferocity. Varg is the fish out of water, and he knows almost as little about certain aspects of this world as we do, which allows us to learn in a way that feels natural. He spent his entire life being enslaved and downtrodden, and he finds it utterly bizarre that anybody could show him kindness, compassion, and respect. Meanwhile, Alvar is a woman determined to prove herself. She's got a chip on her shoulder, and she's not going to let anyone stand in her way. She's going to earn battle fame and respect. The explanation behind these motivations is actually really intriguing. Even though all three characters can handle themselves in a fight and do some pretty brutal stuff at times, they also have their own traumas and a gentle side that you slowly become familiar with as the story progresses. Usually I have one character that I gravitate towards in any given story, but it's difficult to pick a favourite here. To be honest, my favourite was whoever we were following in any given chapter. I started out thinking Varg was my guy, switched to Orca, and by the end of it I had a soft spot for Alvar and found myself being really invested in her journey. The characters don't always do things that you agree with or even approve of. Sometimes you're left wondering, was that a bit far? But that makes them feel like real people. You care about what happens to them and how their actions affect the people around them. Gwyn had me on the edge of my seat as a character is faced with a choice later on in the story. I could understand exactly why they would make one of the choices, even though I really didn't want them to make it. There's so many twists and turns, and another thing that I loved was that Gwyn manages to make it exciting and impactful even when you guess the plot points. Even though I guessed a few things right, they never played out at the time or in the way I was expecting. It's not just the main three though, there's a host of side characters who all feel fully realised, and Gwyn does a fantastic job of drawing you in, making you care, and then sucker punching you when one of them bites the dust. When a character dies, you feel it. There's a certain character who I was expecting to get killed off, but when it happened, it caught me by surprise and played out in a way that made me audibly gasp, and I'm not exaggerating. As I got deeper and deeper into the story, I just kind of found myself falling in love with Gwyn's style. I want him as a mentor. One of the things that I want to carry over into my own writing is that Gwyn doesn't waste words. Everything matters. It's visceral. When someone gets stabbed with a sax or spear, it punches its way into their flesh, and you really feel it. Later on in the story, a group of characters are confronted by a landscape that is beautifully grim and illuminated by a vigorous equivalent of the Northern Lights. It was so evocative and real. I felt like I was standing there with the characters, and I loved it. I did have two problems though. One big, one small. We'll start with the smaller problem, which was a structural issue that I found a bit jarring. The story builds to this intense climax that left me reeling with my jaw open as I struggled to process the epic amounts of drama I'd just had injected directly into my thought cage. But instead of leaving me on that stunning final image, Gwyn moves on to a final chapter that ends with a much more personal cliffhanger. In a way that does work, because this is a very personal story. It just kind of felt like I was on a roller coaster that ended by gently rolling into the station rather than slamming me into a deep pool of icy cold water, like Valhalla does at Blackpool Pleasure Beach. The cliffhanger itself was a cool reveal that I didn't see coming, and I really liked it. I just wish that pacing wise Gwyn had switched the chapters round so he could have left me with a shocking finale rather than an intriguing one. However, it is a personal taste thing, and it really doesn't detract from the overall quality of the narrative. The bigger issue was the narrator, Colin Mace. I just didn't feel like he was the right fit. To be honest, in my opinion, it just suffered from a lack of emotion in his delivery. There were certain parts that felt like they should be tugging at my heartstrings, but they just didn't. It's just a shame because I was emotionally invested in the story, but I just kept getting taken out of it in the dramatic moments because I felt there was something lacking in Colin Mace's delivery. Luckily for The Shadow of the Gods, it's good enough to just bypass those audible issues. I found myself less and less bothered by it as the story progressed because I was just too into it. In the end, this just ticked all my nerdy little boxes, and it's really stuck with me over the last few weeks. I've been a bit obsessed with Valhalla Calling since then, and in an unrelated story, I may or may not have purchased some beard oil today in a vain attempt to encourage my pathetically sparse beard to hurry up and grow. It was just a gripping experience that felt like it had some authenticity because Gwyn has such a genuinely deep love for Norse mythology and is also a battle reenactor, so he knows how it actually feels to be in a shield war, and that shows. The best books are the ones that just get under your skin and have an impact on you. I found myself thinking about The Shadow of the Gods a lot. I walked away from it with an interest in Norse mythology. I feel like it's already improved my writing, and I may have found a new author to fanboy over. I'm excited to see how the series progresses, and I cannot wait to get to The Hunger of the Gods early next year. Now it's time for the question of the day. Let's play a little game, shall we? You now have to face the main character of the last book you read in a mead drinking competition. Who are you facing, and would you win? I'm currently reading The Santa Killer by Ross Greenwood, and honestly, I reckon Barton would drink me under the table. Have you enjoyed this video? If so, the like and subscribe buttons are just sitting there, waiting to be pressed. Now press 'em, or I'll feed you to a ravenous sea serpent. Have you got thoughts to share? Maybe you just want to say hi? Well, you know where the comment section is, and now you can join the discussions in the Dark Discord. Link in the description. Thanks ever so much for spending time with me today, guys. Until next time, take care. For now I'm off, and you should have a good one.